As I pulled up to the address provided on my Airbnb booking, I had no idea that my weekend getaway would transform into a harrowing encounter with the supernatural. The listing had promised a serene retreat in an old, secluded farmhouse, surrounded by sprawling woods. It seemed like the perfect escape from the stresses of city life. Little did I know that the peace and quiet I sought would soon turn into a nightmare beyond imagination. The farmhouse was a quaint, weathered structure, seemingly untouched by time. Its charm had a rustic allure, and the vast, untouched forest stretched out as far as the eye could see. The isolation was palpable, the only sound the distant chirping of birds and the rustling of leaves in the wind. It was exactly what I needed, or so I thought. I was greeted at the door by a middle-aged woman with an eerie, unsettling smile. She introduced herself as Margaret, the owner of the Airbnb, and handed me the key to the farmhouse. Her eyes held a strange intensity, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. The interior of the farmhouse was quaint but cozy. The living room featured a crackling fireplace and antique furniture, and the walls were adorned with faded photographs of people who had likely lived here decades ago. The place had a nostalgic charm that tugged at my heart, and I quickly settled in. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through the windows, the sense of isolation deepened. I lit a few candles and settled down to read a book, convinced that the eerie feeling was simply a byproduct of my overactive imagination. Little did I know that the night would unfold like a descent into madness. It started with the sounds, faint and distant, whispers in the dark that seemed to emerge from nowhere. At first, I dismissed them as the wind playing tricks on me, but they grew louder, more distinct. I strained to make out the words, and they sent shivers down my spine. They spoke of unholy rituals, dark ceremonies, and a cult that had thrived in these very woods. Panic began to claw at my chest as I realized that I was not alone in this farmhouse. The isolation that had once seemed so inviting had become a prison, and I could feel the walls closing in around me. I considered leaving, but when I tried the door, it refused to budge. I was trapped, and the realization was suffocating. The whispers grew louder, more malevolent, and I could hear chanting now. The voices seemed to come from all directions, surrounding me. I had no choice but to follow them, to uncover the source of this unnatural phenomenon. The isolation had become a relentless force, driving me deeper into the heart of darkness. As I ventured down the creaking wooden stairs into the basement, the air grew thick with an oppressive energy. My heart raced, and a sense of foreboding washed over me. In the dim light, I saw a group of robed figures surrounding a grotesque altar, their faces obscured by hoods. Candles flickered, casting eerie shadows on the stone walls. The cult was in the midst of an unholy ritual, chanting in a language I couldn't comprehend. Dread washed over me as I realized the severity of the situation. I had stumbled upon something beyond my understanding, something malevolent and otherworldly. Before I could retreat, one of the cultists, their hood slipping to reveal a face contorted by fanaticism, spotted me. Panic set in as the room fell silent. The cult leader, a tall, imposing figure with eyes as cold as ice, approached me with a wicked smile. "You shouldn't have come here," the leader said in a voice that sent shivers down my spine. With lightning speed, the cultists advanced on me, and I turned and fled up the stairs. The isolation that had once seemed serene was now a nightmarish maze, the walls closing in as I raced through the farmhouse. I could hear their chanting growing louder, echoing through the narrow hallways. Desperation guided my steps as I sought a way out. I stumbled upon a back door, flung it open, and burst into the forest. The cold night air hit me like a wave of relief, but I knew that I couldn't stop running. The cultists were in pursuit, their footsteps pounding behind me as I sprinted through the woods. As I fled through the dense woods, the cultists' sinister chants echoed in pursuit. The isolation that had once seemed tranquil now felt like a labyrinth of terror. My breath came in ragged gasps, and my heart pounded as I navigated the dark forest, my only goal to put as much distance as possible between me and those robed figures. The trees loomed like menacing sentinels, and the underbrush seemed to conspire against me, tangling my legs and slowing my frantic escape. The cultists' voices grew nearer, and I could hear their footsteps closing in. Panic gnawed at my chest, and I knew I had to keep moving. As I sprinted through the woods, my foot suddenly caught on a protruding root. I tumbled forward, crashing to the forest floor. Pain radiated through my body as I struggled to my feet, my ankle throbbing. Desperation guided me as I limped onward, fueled by fear and the relentless pursuit. The isolation of the forest was inescapable, and the darkness pressed in around me, its weight nearly suffocating. I knew I had to reach the car, my only hope of escaping this nightmare. The cultists' chants continued to haunt me, a constant reminder that they were closing in. Finally, I burst out of the woods into a moonlit clearing. My car was within sight, its headlights cutting through the darkness like a lifeline. Adrenaline surged through me as I hobbled toward it, fumbling for the keys in my pocket. The cultists emerged from the woods behind me, their robed figures illuminated by the car's headlights. Their chanting had reached a fever pitch, and their faces were contorted with fanaticism. I could see the cult leader among them, his eyes filled with a sinister determination. I fumbled with the keys, my trembling hands struggling to find the right one. The cultists were closing in, their voices a cacophony of malevolent chants. With a final desperate twist, I ignited the engine, and the car roared to life. As I hit the gas, the cultists lunged toward the car, their hands outstretched. The isolation and claustrophobia that had plagued me in the farmhouse and the forest now seemed insignificant compared to the terror of being pursued by the cult. My heart pounded as I sped away, leaving the cultists behind, their sinister chants fading into the distance. I drove for hours, putting as much distance as possible between me and that forsaken place. The isolation and claustrophobia of the farmhouse and the woods still haunted my every thought, but the fear of the cult was even more relentless. I couldn't shake the feeling that they might still be out there, searching for me. As I write this account, I am in a nondescript motel, far from that nightmarish encounter. The isolation and claustrophobia have followed me, and the fear of the cult's return is a constant presence. I don't know if I will ever truly escape their clutches, but one thing is certain: the darkness of that night will stay with me forever, a haunting reminder that some secrets are best left undisturbed, and some places are best avoided at all costs.